from the sound, all right? Because it's by doing that that we eliminate feedback. So the engineers have asked me to just remind you to do that. And I will also give you in a little while, for those of you who'd like to get connected to Wi-Fi, we have that information for you, especially those of you who are joining us for the first time. So, speaking of first time, I can't remember if those of you who were not here over the past couple of days, I would just like to extend a warm welcome to you and thank you for being here. Now, our first session, CEOs Meet the Press, Corporate Outlook 2026 and beyond. This is really, and it's going to be an exciting session because, of course, the press is always central to what we do. And for that reason, we have decided that this session we'd kick things off with that this morning. And the moderator for that session is Mr. Dashan Hendricks. He's Business Content Manager, Jamaica Observer. And if you don't mind, I'd like to invite you to join me in welcoming him as we get things started on the final day of the 21st Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference.
No, good morning, everyone. No, it sound dead. Lively up yourself now. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That sound lively enough? Let me try one more time. I hear if I get really lively. Good morning, everyone. That sound better. Now, welcome to the CEOs Meet the Press Corporate Outlook 2026 and beyond on this day 3 of the JSE Investments Capital Markets Conference 2026. Now, today, here, we will bring together certainly some of the top leaders in the Caribbean to share insights on collaboration, resilience, and market development under the theme, Capital Markets Fueling Economic Resurgence and Resilience. And I am Dashan Hendricks, I'm the moderator. I'm the Business Content Manager at the Jamaica Observer. And you'll hear from our distinguished CEOs, starting with Mr. Frank James. Just welcome him up, Mr. James. And Mr. James is the CEO of Grace Kennedy Limited.
A company rooted in Jamaica and trusted around the world.
We care about the people we serve, our customers, our communities, and each other.
In every product, every bite, every money transfer, and every transaction, we deliver with heart, with pride, and with purpose.
Through our trusted brands and dynamic businesses, Grace Kennedy continues to grow our reach and deepen our impact. It's people.
It's purpose. It's Grace Kennedy.
We are food.
We are financial services.
Nous sommes mondiaux.
We are family.
Somos multiculturales.
We are.
We are Grace Kennedy.
All right, what an intro from Grace Kennedy. A good intro from Grace Kennedy. All right, we're now going to invite Mr. Angus Young. He's the CEO of NCB Capital Markets. Welcome, Mr. Angus Young. And then Mr. Jerome Smalling. He is the CEO of JMMB Bank. And finally, Mr. Cecil Foster, who is the Managing Director of the Fosrich Group of Company. Please join me in welcoming them all to the stage. And as we get into this session, we are going to invite the CEOs, each individual, to give a short synopsis and outlook of their company and on Jamaica. We're going to start with in the same order we came up here, we're going to start with Mr. Frank James first. Frank?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you to the JSE, thanks Dashan for this opportunity to share a bit of how we at Grace Kennedy see the world. I'll start with a quick story. I became CFO for Grace Kennedy in 2012. And those of you in this room will remember that shortly thereafter, we had the NDX, National Debt Exchange. And then in 2019, I became CEO of the foods business. And those of you in this room will remember shortly thereafter, we had COVID. And then just under a year ago, I became group CEO, and shortly thereafter, the third strongest hurricane in the history of the world hit Jamaica, and we entered probably the most heightened geopolitical environment in our lifetime. I share this story not because I am the common factor, but because crisis is. Crisis is the common factor. The truth is, this story is not unique to me in any way. More and more, we are living in a time where moving from one crisis to the next is the new normal. It's ordinary course. And the businesses that will be successful are those that realize this and determine how to plan for, recover quickly from, and find opportunities in each crisis. This is what we call today resilience. So with that mindset, we at Grace Kennedy are very optimistic about the future. And we gain that optimism by understanding the things in the world that we cannot change, and then focusing with all our might on the things in the world that we can change, and being very clear on the things that we refuse to change. And I'll take you briefly through each of them. So what are the things we cannot change, but we must understand? Well, you know all of them. The rapidly changing trade environment. Globalization is now giving way to protectionism and nationalism. It has implications for migration patterns, for market access. We're seeing the introductions of new tariffs and remittance taxes, creating friction in trade and transactions and increasing the cost of trade and transactions. We're seeing unprecedented events such as COVID and Melissa, and ongoing effects of climate change disrupting supply chains with implications for food security. AI revolution changing the way we work and how we access data. The changing oil landscape, you can ask Professor Young all about that, he can tell you. And the list goes on and on and on. So what are the things we can change and must focus on? Let's start with Jamaica. The Jamaican government has done an excellent job of accessing $6.7 billion that's going to flow into the economy over the next 3 years. Significant injection into the economy. We must focus on the opportunities that come from that. Other than the obvious impact on the construction sector, what about the opening up of new road networks and the opening up of new communities? Big opportunities. If we go further in the region, Guyana, expected to be the world's fastest growing economy in 2026. Clearly opportunities for South-South trade. We at Grace Kennedy to continue to drive our global growth ambitions. And one thing that these unprecedented events has made clear and reinforced for us is the importance of diversification, because these events can hit one country today and hit another country tomorrow. Key to that is investing in a most robust, optimized supply chain. And we're actively doing that to ensure that we have the most robust supply chain in the region. Another key area of focus is our digital strategy, which enables agile market access. So recently, we entered Guyana with our GK1 app. And in very short order, we're going to be entering Trinidad and Cayman. Now, previously, we couldn't enter markets like that back to back. It would have taken us significantly more time. But because of digital, we can be agile in the way we enter new markets. Digital also builds our resilience. So, for example, when physical locations were closed due to Melissa, our customers were able to continue sending remittances, and we saw a spike in digital remittances. We're also looking at how AI can level the playing field as we face large global competitors. by giving us access to data that probably previously was only reserved for large global companies, or giving us the opportunity to create operational efficiency that traditionally would have taken a lot greater scale. We are focused on innovation to create products and services that remove friction from our customers and meet their changing needs. So, for example, I mentioned a while ago remittance taxes. Well, if you send digital remittances, you actually don't face the remittance tax. So here's a challenge or crisis, remittance tax. We know how important remittances are to Jamaica. Well, here's the opportunity, digital remittance product. Our customers are now going to be more concerned about sustainability as we recognize the real effects of climate change. How do we create products and services that meet and address that concern? And then I would want to share with you the thing that is our biggest focus, our people, our greatest source of resilience, our people. There was a corporate video shared at the beginning, which really reflects who we are at Grace Kennedy. It reflects our people. They are the heartbeat of GK, innovative, resilient, agile, multicultural, and united. And we must continue to invest in our people in this rapidly changing world. The video, and this is where I'm going to get to the final one, which is what we refuse to change, possibly the most important, what we refuse to change. The video also reflects the values, the core values that guide us at Grace Kennedy, and these we refuse to change. Honesty, integrity, trust, commitment, humility, and respect. We believe that is why we have been around for 104 years. Come February 14th, will be our birthday, and we believe that will take us 104 and more beyond. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Mr. James. And we're going to just invite Angus Young to just come and give his presentation right away. Angus?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So this morning, what I'd like to do is share with you a little bit about the future of the broker-dealer here in Jamaica and the region, what that's going to look like. It's going to look a lot different than what it looks like today, and the importance of large, strong, indigenous financial institutions to Jamaica and to our region. So first up, the future of broker dealing. On, I think it was Tuesday night, we spoke about the regulatory environment and its evolution. We spoke about the adoption of Basel III going forward, the capital adequacy requirements that come along with that, the liquidity requirements that come along with that. We spoke about Twin Peaks regulation, what that would look like, what that would cost, and of course, this special resolution regime, which again is also something that the industry would bear the cost of in more ways than one. Now, this is going to influence what the future broker-dealer looks like, because these regulations are going to make the balance sheet of the future be more scientifically crafted. When you adopt capital adequacy, liquidity requirements, and this becomes part of your regulation, of your laws, the construct of the balance sheet going forward is going to be more disciplined. The pricing of assets, the pricing of liabilities, focuses on return on capital, return on risk-rated capital, etc., are going to change things a little bit. Pricing will become more organized, more disciplined, and that's what's going to influence the future balance sheet. Now, that in itself is going to make things a little more challenging, because the amount of regulation that is coming on board with Twin Peaks, special resolution regime, etc., the cost of this regulation is going to be borne by the broker-dealer. So imagine a scenario where the future broker-dealer has these Basel III, Twin Peaks, these things to abide by, has to build the talent and the intellectual capital to abide by it, has to be more disciplined with pricing, balance sheets, construct, and then, of course, pay for the regulation. Essentially, what it does, it creates a safer environment, and that's great, but it creates a higher return hurdle for the broker-dealer. If we are being really disciplined with respect to the return on capital, when you price all of these changes in, the hurdle rate for an appropriate rate of return as a broker-dealer is changing, is getting higher. The teams that are involved in compliance and risk management, regular reporting, those teams are growing exponentially, an additional cost to be borne by the broker-dealer. So the mark is higher, and I think it's going to drive changes, and these changes look more like, in my opinion, you know, it's going to force consolidation. So I think going forward, over the next 5 years, you're going to see more consolidation in the broker-dealer community, and you're going to see more indigenous institutions. As the foreign entities, you know, as you raise the bar on the minimum return on capital, and you think about all the different risks we spoke about on Tuesday night, I think the foreign institutions, probably it starts to look a little less attractive, and the consolidation force, not the consolidation that I think will happen locally, I think you'll also see a more indigenous environment going forward. So to the youngsters in the crowd, or those young CFAs, those training in the CFAs, now starting off at broker-dealers, financial institutions, if you want a future in investment banking in the region, my advice to you is look for the firms that are doing the most deals. If you plug yourself into the firms that are doing the most deals, you're going to get exposure to different types of transactions. Every transaction has different learnings. And the more transactions you do across a broader scope, is you develop your intellectual capital and your specialty knowledge more. So look for the firm that's doing the most deals, so you can get exposure to that learning. Look to the firm with the most funds under management, because jump high, jump low, if it's not funded, it's not going to happen. So look for the firm with the greatest funds under management. And then lastly, but extremely important, and Frank touched on it, look for a firm who has a culture that aligns with your values and how you operate. Culture, and of course, look for executive who you, in your opinion, think you would love to be mentored by those executives. So for the young professionals who are considering a career in this industry, that would be my advice to you based on how I see things are changing going forward. Switching gears now to the importance of indigenous institutions to our region. You know, when I thought last night of how to deliver this message, you know, I believe talk is cheap, right? So I could tell you anything you want to hear, but talk is cheap. The importance of large, strong, indigenous financial institutions could not be demonstrated more tangibly than the well-documented in the press $15 billion transaction that the NCB Financial Group has just completed with the Jamaica Broilers Group. I know it seems like a cheap plug, but I've read the articles leading up to this conference. There's a lot of inaccuracy. And if I have to convince you why strong, large indigenous institutions are important to where we live, I think this is the best medium for me to do so. So just to get some of the mechanics out of the way, and I invite the press to listen very carefully. The transaction that NCB Financial Group did with the Jamaica Broilers Group, and it's two public firms, so in time you would read about it in quarterly releases. It took 6 months. 6 months is double the time the typical capital markets transaction takes. And it took 6 months because Jamaica Broilers ran into very, very significant this transaction to make sure we custom tailor the deal to assist Jamaica broilers to go to the next stage. So we essentially put funding in a custom tailored manner across every point of the curve by flexing the breadth of the NCB financial group. In addition to that, we would have blended the approach by merging our corporate and investment banking teams recently at NCB. And the tangible evidence of that is a transaction here where it is multi-tranche. There's bank loans in there, there's long-term bonds in there, there's medium-term bonds in there. So we really took the group as the largest financial group in Jamaica and probably the second largest financial conglomerate in the region to work with the largest indigenous agricultural firm here in Jamaica. And why was that important? It's important because Jamaica Broilers has 2,500 staff. Jamaica Broilers has over 12,000 indirect staff. Wherever Jamaica Broilers operations are, there are communities built around it and depend on it. Employment and food security is very, very important in Jamaica. Jamaica Broilers has 2/3 market share in the domestic poultry space here in Jamaica. That's food security. That's employment. There was no way the largest FI, indigenous FI, is going to look at the largest indigenous agri-firm here in Jamaica and not get involved. And it was not fly by night. I said it took 6 months to get this transaction done. My friends, that is the best way I could think about demonstrating to you how important large, strong, indigenous financial institutions are to us here in the Caribbean region. Building a better Jamaica. Who else could do this other than NCB? And of course, we take our role in Jamaica and the region very seriously. Thank you.
All right, everybody, I hope you are all listening and making notes because we're going to have a question and answer session right after. And I hope that you all make keen notes on the questions you're going to ask each of these CEOs. I'm going to welcome now Mr. Jerome Smalling. He is the CEO of MMB Bank. Jerome.
Thank you, Dashon. Good morning. At the JMMB Group, our purpose remained steady for more than 30 years, to be true financial partner, walking alongside our clients, anchoring everything we do in love, partnership, and mutual respect, values that our clients know and trust. As market evolves, our commitment remains unchanged, to provide the right advice, right access, and the right support at every stage of our clients' journeys. When we think about 2026, we see a year of cautious optimism and meaningful opportunities. If, of course, we approach them with clarity, discipline, and a deep partnership. We have identified several factors that we must be prepared to navigate in Jamaica and across the Caribbean. The theme of this conference is consistent with the JMMB Group, a regional player with physical presence in 4 Caribbean countries and a track record of having delivered capital market solutions to multiple players across the hemisphere. Currently, economies continue to face uncertainties of fluctuating interest rates, inflation, and climate-related exposures. We have, however, flagged the shifting geopolitical landscape as a major emerging factor to be considered and navigated, along with environmental challenges and low access to financial services for the most vulnerable segments of the communities that we serve. From a geopolitical perspective, we operate in jurisdictions that are front and center of recent developments. And while the news houses have moved on to activities outside of our region, we must remain focused on crafting strategies to mitigate against the negative effects of a potentially divided Caribbean. In fact, as a regional player, we see ourselves as a catalyst for continued collaboration versus a return to nationalistic postures. In our experience, a unified Caribbean approach with combined efforts, free flow of capital, talent, and culture is vital to the growth and development of the region. In Jamaica in particular, we have experienced a surge in demand for home ownership solutions from the diaspora in the face of uncertainties in adopted home countries. We won't say which one or two. The Jamaican government is set to deploy up to $10 billion in the rebuilding of areas affected by Hurricane Melissa, and has also indicated the intention to undertake a wider modernization and development program. This represents almost 50% of GDP, to put it in context. So this is expenditure up to 50% of our GDP in a very short window. At JMMB, we therefore expect the following: heavy demand for engineers and artisans in an economy that was enjoying almost full employment leading up to hurricane and was already reporting a shortage of skilled workers. Continued growth in key sectors such as SME, construction, housing and export-oriented services. Greater demand for financial solutions, a renewed interest among clients in long-term planning and wealth building, and increased opportunities for regional financial collaboration through access to opportunities across borders. Through our investment solutions, advisory capabilities, and educational efforts, we remain committed to helping more participants to enter and benefit from the wealth-building opportunities available in our financial systems. A strong, inclusive, and well-functioning capital market is essential to development, and we see our role as supporting that ecosystem every step of the way. A core part of our outlook for 2026 is the extent to which the SME segment, which is the segment with the greatest number of economic active participation through ownership and employment. It is imperative that they receive the support required to continue to fuel growth across our region. We have crafted purpose-built products and services to facilitate cross-border access to capital, as well as support of key conduits to cross-border commercial activities and country-agnostic financial services within the framework, of course, of multiple regulatory structures. Don't want to step on the toes of our regulators. This includes access to credit for SMEs, mortgages, home ownership solutions, and financing that supports productivity, innovation, and expansion. Our services include special facilities for green energy and production technology. We believe that when businesses and households thrive, the economy thrives. Across the group, we're investing in technology, and our digital strategy is heavily focused on inclusion. We have benefited from the earlier presentations at this same conference on the advancement of technology, and JMMB will increase investment in AI and other technologies in our effort to support access to financial services, even in the most remote communities. At JMMB, digital transformation is not about replacing human connection, it's about enhancing it. Our goal is to give clients intuitive digital tools for the everyday moments and meaningful in-person advice for the life-changing ones. This hybrid approach is central to our strategy for 2026 and beyond. Having identified environmental challenges, we will continue our journey of embedding ESG in everything we do through our policies and programs, both for our operations and those of the clients we serve. As we look towards 2026 and beyond, our priorities at JMMB Group remain focused on deepening the relationships that have always anchored our work. ensuring that every client feels supported, understood, and empowered to achieve their goals. We will continue to strengthen the connection across banking, investments, and insurance offerings, creating a more seamless and holistic financial experience for the individuals and businesses that we serve. At JMMB Group, our future is rooted in possibility, but grounded in purpose. The financial world will continue to change, but our commitment remains the same. To be a partner you can trust, to support the dreams that matter most, and to help build a future of resilience, opportunity, and shared prosperity for Jamaica and the region. Thank you.
Well, bang on time, and I just hope you're all making your notes to ask your questions as they come along. Mr. Cecil Foster is here now to do his own presentation on Fosrich.
Always a pleasure to stand and to share some of the ideas that we are standing on at Fosrich. 3 words. 1, connections, committed, winning. We see what has happened in the country as something that is requiring us to remain and become closer to the hurting customers. We have traveled the country with our teams, and we have listened to the hurt that the customers in the West especially have faced and are facing, and we have decided at Fosrich that these 3 pillars are what we're going to be executing this year and the year to come. So connecting with our customers, meaning we sit with them and we understand by listening to what their pain points are, and we come back to our boardrooms and we determine by making programs in how we are going to be helping them through this terrible time that they are going through. Look, a lot of customers that we serve fall in the category that is really the investment funds are coming into the country and moving in those directions. Unlike some industries where you find some kind of decimation has taken place, the Fosrich company has been standing on 4 pillars. 1 is the manufacturing of PVC pipes and conduits in the country, the supply of electrical for all of your construction and rebuilding, your energy, which is the buzzword now in the country and across the globe, and also our lighting experience that we give to people. So these 4 categories that we bring to the market are all in tremendous demand. And this is what we have gleaned from the interactions that we have had with our customers. And so we have sat and we have worked and will continue to work on strategies to help them through this tough period that they're going through. As a company, we also got some scare when we came through the Melissa debacle, because we have 3 locations in Montego Bay, and we were a little bit scratched, and we thank God for that. But our people were mostly affected, and we did all we could to support them with all. When electricity was not available, we gave them power. You know how we did that? Solar power. We just take care of our people because we wanted not only to connect with the customers, but we as a company want to connect with each other and help each other through. And so that is what we are doing on the connection side. Committed. We know that nothing is achieved by simple action. It takes hard, dedicated, and tenacious work to get anything that you want in life. And so last year, we didn't know that Melissa was going to happen. But last year, May, we decided to engage in an integration of some sorts by going into a hardware distribution business. And what has happened since last year, the 28th of October, we know. And right now, the scale at which the demand is hitting us is unbelievable. And so we see that our commitment to encourage a positive development and build back is something that we are I want to say reaping, but we are seeing that we need to continue on this path. And so what was just said earlier falls in line with what we see as a build back, whether you are going to be building roads, whether you're going to be building communities, cities, whether you're going to be building churches, schools, we have the solution in what we offer to the market at Fosrich. And the final one, so we have done connections, we have done committed, and we are going to be winning. If we do these two right, we will be winning. And it's not only we as a company, but we will be winning as a country. Because here it is. We have decided, based on what we have seen in the market, that the time has come for us to to form what you call it, a special company to deal with the energy demand that is now facing us. Solar company. So at present, we have formed at Fosrich this company called MSE, Middlesex Solar Energy. And that company stands ready to serve and to help the country and the individuals to win as we go forward. The funds that are being placed in the country will only benefit the country, we have said to the powers that be, if we are a part of the rebuilding process. And we at Fosrich, we stand ready to be a part of that building back of the country of Jamaica. And so we are clearly ready and willing to be connected, we are committed, and we are going to be winning. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go into our question and answer session right now, inviting questions from the floor. I'm just going to ask, when the questions are being asked, 1 second, I'm just trying to find where the microphones are for the, okay. All right, we're going to start with a question on the floor. Kalila in the front has the first question. And before you ask a question, for the panelists, we're going to be using these microphones. Just turn them on, and as being instructed, just hold the mic as close as possible to your mouth so that the audio can be captured as best as possible.
Hi, good morning. Kalila Enriquez Reynolds, Money Media. This question is for our financial sector participants, Angus and Jerome. And Frank, maybe you too, if you want to weigh in on the issue. GK does have a significant financial services. On Tuesday, at the opening ceremony, the Prime Minister hinted at the modernization of regulations for the financial sector, and he kind of crouched it in the fact that these regulations were crafted during the FinSAC era, and so our situation today is a lot different. We don't need those same stringent regulations. However, in a post-SSL Jamaica, what type of regulations do we need to re-inspire investor confidence?
You can go ahead. Each about a minute.
Thanks, Kalila. So from what we have sight of, at the broker-dealer community, at least who we're addressing today, it looks like the adoption of Basel III. It looks like the adoption of Twin Peaks regulation, where essentially the Bank of Jamaica pretty much champions regulation across the industry, so both banking and the broker-dealer. And The Minister of Finance yesterday would have also hinted that there is a willingness by the government to look at pension regulation in terms of modifying pension regulations. So, for example, it can take more exposure to infrastructure. The Honorable Minister also spoke about her desire to put a more regulatory framework or policy framework where receivables factoring is concerned for receivables from the government and arms of the government. So I think the accommodative stance, Kalila, is one where we realize that the infrastructure asset has been one of the best performing assets in Jamaica. I think that new products are going to come to market which will create more movement of money, quicker access to liquidity, greater churn and turnover. But on the safety side, the adoption of Basel III and Twin Peaks, I would be very surprised if there is any change of direction where that's concerned.
Jerome, you want to take it on as well? To add anything?
Okay, thanks, Angus. The only thing I'd say is that it's a little unfortunate that an event, I mean, I've been around a long time, and people at my company are tired of hearing me say that. But I was around in the 90s, I was around in the 2000s, and it's unfortunate that not systemically important company, a very small company, had challenges that, you know, more or less stain the entire industry. It's unfortunate that by asset, it is almost insignificant in relation to the total funds under management by Jamaican institutions. So every time I hear persons referring to that event as an indication or something that should be helping to formulate policy, you know, I say it's a little unfortunate. When you look at the facts that have been revealed in that particular case, it did not have anything to do with regulations or the strength or oversight. What we had was, you know, things that slipped through the crack. And I'm speaking only from what is available to the public. I have no inside information. So what I'd say to yourself, Kalila, and the Jamaican public, think about how insignificant that institute, think about the billions of dollars under management that you have placed and you have given in trust to the many institutions across Jamaica and how well they have managed and have been stewards of your funds. So I'll go back to the shifting in regulations. It is true that the regulations are crafted around protection and the protecting, of course, depositors and investors. If you look at from the capital adequacy structure where financial institutions are required to park capital in the event of a fallout, when you look at deposit insurance and then you look at the reserve requirement, when you put everything together and the new regulations around building resilience, the investment and banking public is almost over-insulated against a fallout in the financial sector. And the good thing is that all of the cost of all of the things I just mentioned, that cost is picked up by the banks and the financial institutions.
But of course, it's passed on to your customers, right?
No, I can't. It would be very difficult to do so.
All right, Frank, you want to take it on as well?
I think, you know, Jerome and Angus handled it very well. I would only say that we do live in a very dynamic world, and the situation Jamaica is in today is far different from 30 years ago. So I do think it is timely for us to review the regulations. And so I think the Prime Minister's approach makes a lot of sense. It's not to weaken, but it is to make sure that they are fit for purpose in the current environment. And I think that with that mindset, if we're not looking to weaken, but make sure it's fit for purpose, then I think we're along the right track.
All right, any other question from the floor? All right, our lady is here, but while the microphone comes, oh, all right. Just identify yourself. Don't make a statement, just get to the question.
Thank you. All right, my name is Tajon Stewart, and this is a question really for Mr. Young. All right? So, Mr. Young, a point you made in your presentation that really stuck with me was the evolution, or at least change in the framework of balance sheets, right? Now, in terms of that change, especially when it comes to things like equity being used to reduce risk or debt refinancing, as well as merger and acquisition strategies, what opportunities do you really see presenting themselves, especially in terms of now capital market professionals, particularly if they're early in their careers, like you've mentioned?
So the regulations and the way the industry is moving towards these regulations, I would have said that, you know, the balance sheet construct would look more scientific going forward. What I meant by that is that it's going to force a discipline in the pricing of risk. You're going to have to justify why you're putting this on your balance sheet, the capital charge that it's going to attract, how do you reward yourself for that capital charge. So the regulations force that disciplined approach. And when the market goes towards that, you know, people, you know, in Jamaica, in Trinidad sometimes, you know, transactions happen outside of terms and conditions that they fundamentally should because of other inefficiencies like excess liquidity and other inefficiencies that drive things that are less fundamental in nature and more market-driven. So I think that when the regulations come into play, it will be more fundamentally driven and less market-driven.
All right, there was a hand over here. All right. Okay.
Hello.
After you, then we come to this young woman over here. But go ahead, since you have the microphone already.
Hi. So my name is Enrique McLaughlin. I study finance in New York City, and also I consider myself a budding entrepreneur. So my question is mainly about, I think Mr. Jerome, Angus Young, they really spoke about banks wanting to improve operational efficiency through technological advancement. How open are banks to financing young entrepreneurs through different, you know, schemes, and what process would we look forward to in the sense of technological advancement through maybe, you know, investment banking or any sorts?
Okay, so what I'd say is that there are, based on the risk framework of the financial sector, if we look at the entire gamut, end to end, and the various structures, the Development Bank of Jamaica has provided support for entrepreneurship through their venture capital fund. So depending on the source of funding, so banks typically are lending out monies that people place on savings. So they're a little more risk averse when it is related to like startups. But then you have investment companies that can raise capital from persons who are willing to invest in these startups. And then you have the government-backed agencies like the DBJ. And the DBJ has a whole suite of funds that are structured around entrepreneurship, venture capital, and supporting the real economy. So I'd say speak with your financial institution, ask about the various products and services that are available. And if it is not available at the institution, it is available through the institution in support of the DBJ.
All right, I'm just going to take the microphone to this lady to just go a little quicker.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm 3C18 there from Mr. Shopper JA. My question is not so much finance related, but is more people-centric. So my question is to Mr. Frank James and Mr. Foster. So for Frank, you would have mentioned in your presentation about things that can be changed and can't be changed. So one of those, of course, is what we just went through in terms of Hurricane Melissa. My question to you, based on, of course, your company with hundreds, if not thousands of employees, in going through Melissa that we just went through, what are some of the things that you have in place from a mental health perspective to help persons recover from what, especially for Gen Zers who have never experienced anything like this before? And for Mr. Foster, you mentioned that both yourself and your team would have traveled Jamaica, especially in the western end, and collected information and went back to the boardroom to look at programs and strategies. Are you able to say what are some of these programs that you'd be using to assist your customers?
Thanks, great question, Tricia. The number one priority coming out of Melissa for us at Grace Kennedy was our people. Of course, in the immediate aftermath, the first thing is to make sure that we could account for all our people. And we have 681 people in the sides of the island that got impacted, and we were able to account for all 681, which was not an easy feat given the communication systems that were down. But once that had happened, of course, the very immediate need after that was to make sure that their physical situation was okay. So arranging housing, accommodation for persons who didn't, and then of course the support through care packages, etc. But very importantly is the point that you have raised, which is the mental health of the team. I went around the island in the immediate days after the hurricane, and I was very moved by the fact that the teams were coming out immediately, even though when you spoke to them, they were going through serious trauma. Speaking to them individually, the experiences they had would traumatize any one of us, even people in Kingston who had relatives outside and were worried about them. And so what have we done about that? Counseling was an immediate response to the team. The leadership being on the ground and connecting with the people, because the people needed to feel their leaders and know that they cared. You know, I can tell you a lot of moving stories, but I won't get into that right now. But you are spot on, and it is not just, while it comes initially from a we care perspective, which is Grace's mantra, the truth is it also, for the hard-nosed business financial people in here, has a very direct effect on productivity. And so if we don't get that right, then we're not going to get our country back up and running. So taking care of the mental health, key priority, and it's something we're actively working on.
Yeah, and for the question that was directed to me, our listening tour brought us very close and personal to most of the customers that we deal with in that region. What we have found is that the customers, they have a resilience that was unbelievable, and they also didn't want handouts. What they wanted is for their suppliers to understand that they didn't want to be all over the place searching for build-back products that they want to do their businesses. They didn't want to be going to 4 or 5 different suppliers. So what we have designed for them is what we call a business growth strategy, where we look at for example, the top 20 products that they carry and they need. And we recognize that most of those, we do supply them. And so we have designed a footprint that we will be in their space and offering these to them. Some of them we will give a little bit more time to return to us the funds, and we will develop and strengthen that relationship as we go forward. So that's one of the strategies that we are using, this business growth strategy, to work with our customers who are talking to us.
All right, any other questions from the floor? No,
hi, good morning.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, hi. Good morning. My name is Janelle Edwards, real estate agent with A.S. James. Mr. Young, Mr. James, both of you spoke a little bit about the framework and development that is going towards agriculture. And if it's one thing that Melissa showcases, how still fragile the agricultural industry is here in Jamaica. So my question is beyond it being just a national risk, what practical steps can financial institutions and listed companies take to mobilize capital into scalable, climate-resistant agriculture, particularly in areas such as storage, processing, and technology, in order to reduce the dependence on imports?
That sounds like Frank.
I'm going to tell me it's me, but I heard financing being your question. But I'll speak about the agriculture. So it's a very important point because food security is becoming more and more important for us as a nation. And when you look at the way our agricultural sector is established, it really is built on the back of small farmers, which are a very important part of our society and how we operate. They're a very important part of my supply chain at Grace Kennedy. Now, how have we dealt with the challenge of the fact that small farmers really don't have huge access to capital, right? And therefore aren't able to operate under these kind of climate smart processes? It actually came out of a public-private partnership. So we partnered with the government and we established a 100-acre agro-park. And that 100-acre agro-park, we are not in farming, but we have then sublet in small 5-acre lots to small farmers. But when you operate on that agro-park, there are certain standards that must be abided by. So we support in making sure the infrastructure is in place, and then our team goes to places like Costa Rica, etc., where they have seen this and bring those practices back. Now, 100 acres in the scheme of things is small for us because we have a much larger farmer network. So we have dedicated a few acres at the agro-park that test best practices, and then we start to pass those on to small farmers outside. Where I'm going with this is I think Jamaica needs to develop this type of mother farm approach where you have larger, more well-capitalized persons going into agriculture, not to replace the small farmers, but really to set up this type of what we call a mother farm, or in our case, the agro-park, which then has the type of climate-smart infrastructure in place that the small farmers can operate through and gives the small farmers a clear route to market because all our farmers have a direct access to us to be able to then sell their products. So Angus can tell you how to fund that, to fund the agro-park, but that's what I would say about climate-smart agriculture.
All right. You're going? All right. I've got to wrap up, Singer, but I'm going to just throw out a question to Jerome and one to Cecil. Jerome, Angus spoke about the regulatory changes, the special resolution regime, the Twin Peaks, the Basel III, and all of that. But more than a decade now, we have had this asset tax on financial institutions, which was supposed to be temporary, but seems to become permanent. What is happening there from your perspective with all these new regulations coming in, with that still on the books? Give me a perspective.
I see you have fans in the audience. Was he placed in the audience to support you? Well, I mean, let me see if I can walk through the raindrops here. We've had the Minister of Finance, who has oversight, is very open to discussions. All the multilaterals, as well as the government, agree that it should not be in place. And so it is an ongoing conversation. It is a conversation that we keep front and center. In fact, we had a meeting with a minister who is totally unrelated. Well, two ministers, Minister Charles and Minister Marks, and we raised it because, you know, people are looking towards the banks to deliver certain things. For example, the $10 billion that the government intends to spend, it needs to be distributed. And some of these places are really deep rural places, sparsely populated. And so they don't have ATMs, they don't have banking. So people are looking towards the sector to provide solutions and to provide support in that regard. But it is going to come at a cost. And we are saying to the government, when you look at the fact that income taxes went down to 25%, and they're keeping it at 33 1/3 for financial institutions, as well as the asset tax, and all the costs related with the new regulations, you know, let's not kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Because the more you pile on, if you look at And we have a young guy who says he's a bit of a financial wizard. Just pull down any financial company. Just pull down the statement from the JSE and look at the assets. Look at the capital at risk. Look at the assets that they've put at risk. And then look at the returns, because that's what we always hear. Banks make a lot of money, but make a lot of money relative to what? As looking at NCB's book just last week, we had a listing of all the assets. They have close to $1 trillion at risk. And they make, like, I believe, the best year was about $48 billion. 48 is a big number in a vacuum. But if I break it down to the simplest, a guy with 1 bus at risk versus a guy with 10 buses at risk, the net profit is going to be greater for the guy with 10 buses. It doesn't mean he's making a lot of money on the backs of anybody. What it means is that he has taken tremendous risk in a country like Jamaica to deliver to shareholders and to provide services for clients. And so we believe strongly that the time to have an open, frank discussion about this asset tax. I mean, it's long gone, and we will not give up on continued conversations.
But does it discourage the financial sector from investing more, since every time you add to your asset base, it will be taxed more?
It does, because that tax is also levied on our loan book. So if we grow our loan book in support of the real sector, there's a tax applied. Even the distribution that we discussed. If we put an ATM in Catadupa, St. Elizabeth, it is an asset on our books, and there's a charge on it. And what I'd say, especially to the PSOJ and other business leaders, you should be behind this. Because if they are not removing the asset tax from the financial sector, will they extend it to other sectors? Will Frank need to pay asset tax on his inventory and his warehouse? Will our businesses, will a busman need to pay an asset tax on the bus that he owns? So it's right now, as His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie said in 1966, today it's me, tomorrow it might be you.
All right, I'm not going to ask further question. I've been given a wrap-up signal, but I've also been given the leeway to get in 2 more questions. I'm just going to ask those 2 people to be very quick because we're out of time.
Hello, morning everyone. Conrado from KPMG. What are the key hurdles that the deals and transaction market is currently facing? And how do you think can the region position itself to attract more foreign direct investments?
So this is what we try to address on Tuesday night, right? When we create a regulatory regime that forces everything to be more scientific, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Then you have to justify the return on your risk in a regulatory manner. It's going to, and then you have the cost of these new regulations. It's going to raise the bar where your minimum hurdle rate of investment is concerned. So what I was trying to say was that we're in a global village. Capital could be deployed anywhere in the world. So why would somebody deploy it here, where we're subject to hurricanes, where the geopolitical risk came into the room? Funny about asset tax, right? The Trinidadians just introduced an asset tax, so for the first time. So that they took that page out of Jamaica's book.
It's contagious.
So we need collectively. We need to create the ecosystem here in Jamaica and the region that attracts capital, and you can only do that if you can compensate people for the risk and for the cost of deploying that capital in the region. So we need to create that environment that would attract, that make us internationally investable.
All right, the last question.
Good morning, everyone. Gabriel Jarrett. My question is to Jerome Smalling. You had mentioned during your speech that technology is the focus and you would have increased investment in AI, and you also mentioned your ECGs. However, AI consumes a lot of water, and in order to cool the data centers, are you able to elaborate more on how JMMB would create a balance between your corporate social responsibility and the AI investment, considering Jamaica is no stranger to water challenges?
And I must add, not just water, but also energy. Jerome?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And are you related to Malcolm Marshall? No, you're too young to know who he is. But he was one of the best fast bowlers who ever represented the West Indies. But let me say that JMMB generally, whenever we take on a partner to provide technology or any type of support, we are very careful in assessing and applying ESG to that company as well, in deciding whether or not we partner with them. I indicated in my presentation that ESG, we apply it to ourselves in our operation, we apply it to our partners, and we apply it to our clients. Cecil can tell you that, we're very strict around it. So it's an excellent question, and it will give us something to think about as we move forward and as we look to partner with these technology providers. Thank you very much for that question.
All right, I really have to cut. I've gone over the time, but could I squeeze him in? Okay, the answer is no. We have to move on. All right, I thank you all for your participation, and you can probably just reach them and ask them the question outside of the big audience. But I thank you all for your participation this morning, and we have come to the end, and we just want to say thanks again to Frank, Angus, Jerome, and Cecil. Thank you, everybody.
Whoa, that's what I call a heavyweight session, right? Fantastic. There are so many potent ideas that came out of that panel discussion that I don't even know where to begin. But, Cecil said one thing, and I thought, what a magnificent idea that is. He mentioned something called a listening tour.
Good morning. It's the final day of the Jamaica Stock Exchange's Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference. I am Rachelle Moncrief. We're here at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel. Come with me. This morning, we bring you live coverage of a focused discussion about building wealth through housing and urban regeneration. The discussion will be led by leader of the opposition, Marco Golding. Persons are walking in and getting ready for the discussion. Stay with us here live on CB.
Introduction to the segment or presentation, which allows me just to introduce the person who will do the presentation. Now, the person down to do the presentation is Mrs. Stacey Ann Tate, and she is a Chief Investment Officer for the NCB Capital Markets Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary of the National Commercial Bank. With over 15 years of experience in portfolio management, risk management, fund management, and corporate finance, she has built a distinguished career in managing portfolio across the Caribbean, including Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, and the Cayman Islands. She currently serves as First Vice President of the Jamaica Securities Dealers Association, where she advocates for the development and improvement of industry standards, collaborate with regulators to strengthen investor protection, and promotes transparency, integrity with Jamaica's security market. Previously, she served as Second Vice President of the JSDA. She's a CFA and also a CAIA, for those who don't know, Chartered Financial Analyst, and also a Chartered Alternative Investment
analysts. Please welcome to this podium Mrs. Stacey Ann Tate.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. Thanks for having me this morning. Good. So I will be speaking to you on the theme Capital for All, Breaking Structural and Regulatory Barriers. I want to give some context about my theme. What do I mean by capital for all? There is this myth that the capital markets is only for a certain segment, large, big, established companies. Well, the capital markets is for all. It's for investors, it's for micro firms. You've been hearing a lot throughout the conference about a micro exchange. It's for small businesses, it's for medium-sized businesses, and it is also for well-established businesses. The capital markets needs to be inclusive, more inclusive. The mere fact that I'm standing here today and addressing you, it's because we have a capital market. We have capital markets across the regions that work, but notwithstanding that, we can make them stronger. From the questions I hear coming from the audience, the things that are being said, there is space for significant improvement, and I'm going to take you through that. Now, given the broader context already, we'll dovetail a little bit more into that. We look at fundraising challenges, and I heard the questions over there, and then some of the solutions that we have seen to date, and then we will look at the challenges and then the future solutions that we need to look to as our North Star. So let's get started. Why fundraising via the capital markets actually matters? Now, why does it matter? It matters because it helps corporates to build resilience, and it does so because it provides robust capital structures for them. Now, it introduces a diverse investor base. Remember I said earlier that the capital markets is for all investors? Well, I'm talking about the investors who are still in school. I'm talking about the investors who have just graduated, the investors who are planning to buy that first home, the investors who are investing for retirement, and plain and simple, the people who want to get rich. The capital markets is for everybody. Now, providing that diverse investor base to corporates, what it helps us to do is to strengthen the company's ability to withstand shocks, access better financing term, and also to grow even when there may be liquidity challenges in other segments of the funding market. It also strengthens economic resilience, the very broad topic of this conference that we're at today. And it does so because it converts domestic savings to capital for businesses that need it, and they need it for growth and for infrastructure. We have been talking a lot about the passing of Melissa and the importance of building infrastructure. This is where the capital markets is going to be significantly important to achieve this. It's also important because it builds financial system resilience, which we need and we have, but we have to protect. And that's because it retains domestic savings rather than relying excessively on external financing that can prove volatile under various shocks. Now, what happens when we don't have it? Or what happens when it's underdeveloped? Well, first, it lowers economic growth, the very thing that all of us want, more and more growth. And it does so because businesses cannot reliably access long-term capital. They may underinvest. So if they want to do more and they can only access a portion, that's underinvesting, that's suboptimal. It also results in capital flight and savings leakage. And it does so because capital outflows will happen if investors can't find a place to put their monies to get that opportunity in terms of a return. And then lastly, increased vulnerability. So when the markets are low in liquidity, small in size, limited instruments, and weak regulatory frameworks, what it will do is that it will result in economic shocks, volatility in the financial assets pricing. So we know why it's important. We know what it looks like when it doesn't work properly or efficiently. And most importantly, we need to stop and pause. We need to stop and pause and reflect on the successes that we have had to date. I'm standing here at the 21st sitting of the Jamaica Stock Exchange conference because we have made significant improvements. What are some of those? Well, we've seen a growth in the retail presence, where improved market conduct has invited more investors to come to the capital market. A stronger retail presence, and this is especially noted in Jamaica. We have seen the expansion in the collateral policy, reforms, regulatory reforms that have transformed how corporate securities get issued and used in the market. We have seen a broad-based reform in areas such as digital transformation and access, and then also to other regulatory reforms like the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market, and in Trinidad, the SME market. Now, when I say digital transformation access, it's important to pause to tell you what I mean. We need to create seamless access, and a significant contribution to that was the Go IPO platform. And the Go IPO platform, what it did, it allowed investors from anywhere in the world, in your bed, whichever part of the room you were in, to apply to an investment in an initial public offer, an APO, whatever it is, in an instant. That was significant. And of course, we saw significant growth in the recognition of carry-Chris ratings. We saw where corporates started to engage and get corporate ratings. So we've done some good work. Notwithstanding the good work that we have done, there are structural challenges that we still need to address today. What are some of those? Well, limited education and understanding from the part of retail investors. Typically, retail investors now, they process risks largely from the standpoint of, is it safe? If it's not government, it's not safe. And or they just think of risk in binary terms, safe or risky. Now, we need to step away from that, because what it creates is a hesitancy of those investors to enter the capital markets. It also then reduces the demand for certain products, even when they're there, because they're not properly addressing the risk or calculating the risk. What does that result in? It results in low retail investor participation rates in our region. Let's look at a few examples. So I'll start with Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago has one of the lowest retail participation. Barbados is similarly constrained. Retail participation is low. In fact, if you recall yesterday, the head of the Barbados Stock Exchange actually raised this as a challenge, that there's not enough activity on the market. And then, of course, we think of Jamaica's continuous progress. We have made significant progress in this area in terms of retail investors. And I'd like to quote some stats here. When we look back at an interview that Dr. Street Forrest did some time ago, she mentioned, or late last year, she mentioned that there was significant growth in the accounts base for the Jamaica Stock Exchange, where there were about 380,000 accounts. When you do 380,000 accounts as a percentage of Jamaica's population, that's around 14% of persons having equity accounts to trade. That's significant. Notwithstanding, there is significant improvement for us to do and work to do, for us to build that. And then, of course, there's work to do in the corporate bonds and trading of corporate bonds. I'm sorry, I just realized you weren't following what I was seeing. But yes, there is significant work to do on the corporate bonds and the trading of corporate bonds on the secondary market. Now, let's look at a robust ratings culture. We also suffer from this in Jamaica. In Jamaica, we don't have a culture that is focused on risk ratings. However, in the global international market, credit ratings are the backbones of decision and investor confidence. Now, I want to say this to you. A vibrant ratings culture or a credit rating is not simply about labeling a security. It is far more than that. It is ongoing flow of information and independent credit assessment that builds the confidence of the market. Confidence of the market to reduce thoughts about skepticism and why they shouldn't enter. And then, of course, confidence in knowing that you can secure long-term pricing that is more economical because the market has grown to trust you. Now, of course, we have seen some significant improvement in the ratings culture in Jamaica, where we see quite a few companies coming up and they're seeking to get rated. And there has been some improvements in Jamaica, but there is still more work to do. Now, when we look at other islands like Trinidad and Tobago, It's still viewed as optional to get a credit rating. And then, of course, there's Barbados, where very few corporate issuances take place. And because very few take place, a ratings culture is not present at all. Last but not least, in terms of structural challenges that we face in the capital markets, is a weak secondary market ecosystem. You have heard this multiple times through multiple presentations that the secondary market trading is a challenge, the depth of the market. Now, it's very important that when investors step to the capital markets, they need to be able to have confidence that they can actually buy and sell their securities when they need to, because you need liquidity. When you don't have that, then investors are hesitant to enter the markets, and then corporate issuers, they struggle to attract the interest because there is this challenge. So this is something that is a structural barrier that we must address as we seek to deepen our capital markets. Again, when we think about the secondary market ecosystems and just live examples, when we think about Jamaica, we see more strength in terms of the equities market, and we also see transactions in corporate fixed income. But when we think about the corporate fixed income experience in Jamaica, they're largely over the counter. We have established platforms in Jamaica to be able to help us with this, like the Jamaica Stock Exchange private market platform. But the challenge that we have had with it is that not many persons have used it. Not many transactions have happened. So it's underutilized and we're not reaping the value of it. Then, of course, we think about Trinidad that struggles with secondary market liquidity, and also Barbados. Sometimes it's very difficult in some of these territories just to get a quote on a security. And to have an active secondary market, you need to actually have active buy and sell quotes being transacted in the market. Now, last but not least, cultural resistance to transparency. This is the need for corporates to keep the information and keep the information private. Now, this is particularly rooted in Trinidad and Barbados, and we see it here in Jamaica, and we also saw it when we were launching the junior market, where persons were afraid of the reporting culture. They were afraid of the work that it would take to actually report on the stock exchange. Well, the reality of it is that our regional capital markets cannot deepen unless our business evolves towards greater openness, accountability, and investor-friendly communication so that our investors can actually understand what they're investing in when they come to the capital markets. Now, let's move to our regulatory or statutory challenges that exist. And I'll take you through a few of the territories in the region, as I have been doing. So Trinidad and Tobago. So the challenges there are largely limited offering restrictions, concentration restrictions, lengthy approval processes that may reduce speed and efficiency. And I'd like to break this down a little bit. Now, when you look at the Securities Act in Trinidad, it limits the number of persons that can participate in a private placement. So when you have a private placement security, it limits the number participating in that issue to 35 persons. Then when we think of some of the other restrictions, we think about the bylaws of 2020 for collective investment schemes. There are restrictions in the amount you can invest in government securities. You have restrictions also on the exposure to any one single issuer. Then on top of that, you are restricted to the amount or the percent that you can participate in one offer. So when an offer comes out, there's a regulation that says that you can only do up to a certain percent, which is this 10%. And then, of course, when I talk about the approval processes for public issuances, it's something that we experience across the board. The idea is that public issuances, the speed to market is important. Therefore, the challenges that exist in getting the approval process or how extensive the process may be is something that we need to look at because it does affect time to market. Let's look at Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. We face high compliance costs after the CLICO collapse. Stringent rules make fundraising very expensive, and then, of course, lengthy approval process that I've spoken to before. On the opening night, and I think I heard it over here in a question and answer segment, we have to realize that regulations after a crisis is absolutely critical to restore stability. It is a must. However, After that is done, we have to move the regulations forward to ensure that there is more growth, more meaningful growth. Now, after post-crisis of CLICO, the stringent rules could include something as simple as a basic repurchase model that we have come to know as something run-of-the-mill. If you're doing that within the Eastern Caribbean, you have to register a prospectus to do that. That's significant. For those of you who are preparers of prospectus, it's a lengthy document. It's very costly because you have to get legal, you have to spend the time to do it. There are multiple reviews, and then it goes through the process. That's an example of how expensive it makes fundraising, which impacts the capital markets. And then, of course, I touched on this a little earlier, but I wanted to show the contrast. In Barbados, private issuances are restricted to 50 persons per issue. Now, let's think of this. You need to raise 50 million US, and you can only raise it from 50 persons. How inclusive is that? You could be raising that 50 million US and including more persons in the market. So again, when we think of it here in Jamaica, we actually don't have a restriction on the number of participants in an issue. But there are guidelines across all the countries in the region that says who are eligible investors. Now, let's turn our attention to our home territory, Jamaica. Some of the things that we need to look at in terms of this regulatory challenges are difference in regulatory requirements, investor restrictions, the approval process, but also to allocation inefficiencies. Let's talk through a few. There are disparities in the capital charges and market risk weightings between corporate bonds and loans for similar risk exposure. So what it means is that there's an additional charge to capital that some investments face, even though the risk profile may be the very same risk profile, only because of how it is categorized as a security as opposed to not being a security. And then, of course, we have where some financial institutions are constrained by a 40% group exposure limit, and then others, like the securities dealer, they have a 25% group exposure limit. Now, what does that mean? That means that when you are putting your balance sheet to work to invest, you can't invest more than 25% of your balance sheet, your capital, to a group of connected issuers. Why does that matter? It matters because if you were seeking long-term capital from the capital markets, you can't optimize because we have a lower limit. So it's important that we address that. And then, of course, there is the pension funds that have a 10% group exposure and a reduced 5% limit for total funds that are exposed to private equity, private credit. Now, why does that matter? It matters because, remember earlier we spoke about the needs for infrastructure, how the capital markets can help, how the capital markets channel savings into productive means. The lower limits then reduces what we can do, the invested capital that can be mobilized in this channel. And when we think of the international experience, the allocation is actually quite different. You have a larger allocation to private credit and the non-traditional type investments to foster long-term growth. Then, of course, we think about the punitive risk weighting for investing in our own GOJ USD international bonds. It's 100% risk weighting versus 0% for the local. And I want to pause right here because I want you to first understand that as a profession, I am foremost for risk management. So the advocacy that I'm doing here today is not against the backdrop of not maintaining proper risk management. And then, of course, we have regulatory restrictions on foreign currency denominated issuances. It is easier for banks to make US dollar loans to clients seeking funding than it is for securities dealers to offer corporate bonds to clients seeking a raise in US dollars. So that's something that we would need to look at in terms of deepening the capital markets. So now that I have looked at the challenges, both structural and regulatory, I want you to take you through what the North Star looks like. What are some of the solutions that we can look at? So firstly, we need to incentivize credit ratings. We need to develop a credit ratings culture. For us to do that, one suggestion is a differentiated capital charge for rated exposures. So what it does is that if you're higher or the higher rated you are, your capital charge is lower. that incentivizes customers and issuers and the persons investing in them to press for credit ratings. In addition to that, we think it is good to align credit ratings to companies' corporate and social responsibilities. Why? It is your corporate and social responsibility to build a confident market, a deep market. And if we all take pride in that, it will help us build a stronger capital market. And then, of course, there's a need to improve financial literacy. Now, financial literacy has improved significantly. Now, it is important for us to improve financial journalism. We would have seen significant improvements over the last 8 to 10 years. And I must say, I see some faces in here and faces that I have engaged with who are very responsible at doing this. Responsible financial journalism is important to protect and to develop the confidence of our capital markets. However, even though the majority of our financial journalism is very responsible, there are a few persons who don't take it very seriously. And my call to action for you is to ensure that you behave responsibly when engaging in financial journalism. That's because the faces in this room, they look to you for guidance, for confidence. You must be open as a journalist. You must be balanced and you must be responsible because the market depends upon you. And then, of course, we want to have continuous education that penetrate the secondary and tertiary students. When I look around the room, I see a lot of students, and it is important that by the time our students get to the working world and they're fully ready to deploy even more money into investing, they have a good idea of risk-adjusted returns, how to process and make those decisions. And then, of course, we want to improve the market transparency and price discovery. How do we do that? Well, let's improve as companies our reporting and transparency and simplicity in language so the investors can understand it. And again, that's where our financial journalism helps because they break down complex matters. And then also, too, we want to ensure that there are greater issuer incentives to have issuers list on the platforms, such as the Jamaica Stock Exchange private platform. It is important for us to get more mileage out of this platform to bring transparency to the price discovery of private issued securities that are trading in the market. Now let's look at the solutions for the regulatory challenges that we have. Well, firstly, we need to reduce the regulatory arbitrage or differences that exist. We need to align capital treatment across risk exposures, and that is the weightings of the, that I would have spoken to for the market risk weightings. And then, of course, we want to prudently revisit restrictions on foreign currency issuances, and we want to align group exposures. We want to reform the pension funds and collective investment scheme limits. We want to revisit the limits for private sector issued security to mobilize more funding for the capital markets, but it's not just about mobilizing funding. It's about protecting and growing the pensions that we are investing on behalf of the persons. And then also, it is for us to defer issue participation to internal risk management protocols. So there are already guidelines that says who are eligible investors in these instruments. We don't need to then say the number, and then also, we also don't need to say that you cannot do more than X% in a particular issue. That can be determined by the portfolio managers. And then, of course, we have other reform considerations. Those include reducing the 100% risk weighting that I spoke about. And I didn't say eliminate, I said reduce. That's what I'm putting out there. I want us to look at advancing regional market integration and cross-border issuances. This is important. By ourselves individually, we are small. Collectively, we are greater. Now, what that will do is that it will increase the scale, the liquidity, and the market depth, and provide a broader investor base for the regional capital markets. And of course, we want to streamline regional approvals. So we want to simplify or shorten the approval process. Again, this does not mean that we have to reduce quality and standard. And then, of course, we want to standardize requirements for cross-listing. So it doesn't matter where you're cross-listing in the region, it's the same. And then when we think about all of those things, I want to leave you with this call to action or contribution. When I say or contribution, I'm not just speaking about NCB capital markets contribution. I am speaking about the contribution of each and every financial institution within the industry. Our contribution is to be thought leaders, advocates, and innovators. How do we do that? Well, we need to actively engage with regulators to convey challenges and objectives to collaborate on industry solutions. Me standing here today at the 21st sitting, addressing you today, I am doing that today. We are doing that today. Regulators are seated in this room. They're listening to us. And it goes beyond today. It goes beyond this room. We need to use the voice of the associations that represent the various institutions within the industry. So you have the Jamaica Bankers Association, you have the Jamaica Securities Dealers Association, you have the Insurance Association of Jamaica. These are powerful voices, and they make us strong. In fact, I think it was in the Prime Minister's keynote address on the opening ceremony night, he cited, I believe, that one of the things that make us strong is the level of collaboration that we have across the private sector with the reform bodies. It's very important. And so I invite the other countries within the region to make sure that voice is being heard, utilize it to collaborate and form solutions for the challenges that we have within the region. Then I need us to devote significant time to seminars to enhance investors' understanding of risk-adjusted approaches. I know a lot of you, like me, we have a lot of work to do at the desk, but it is so important to participate in these conferences because it gives us the ability to nurture the young minds, to help investors to grow and to understand better the financial market. And of course, we need to leverage the successes in the respective jurisdictions to bring more sophisticated balance sheets to invest in strong projects within the region. Now, I want to herald the improvement, the significant improvement that I've seen in the last 8 to 10 years. There has been magnificent collaboration across the stock exchanges within the region and working on different solutions. And what I like about the collaboration that I've seen so far is that where they see that something works in one market, they don't try to recreate the wheel. They take it, they tweak it, because it doesn't fit exactly, but then they build on it and it makes them more efficient to look for the next opportunity. We need to keep doing more of that to make our region stronger. And then lastly, I see my 1 minute call, and I'm just about there. We are to use innovation and technology to create greater capital market participation and access to investors. Now, if it is that it is seamless, the less friction something has is the more that you're able to invite people to come along with you. We need to make and use the digital technology to invite investors to be more present in the capital markets, and also to invite issuers to be more present in the capital markets in how they go about their issuances. And then that would take me to the end, ladies and gentlemen, at my 1 minute marker. I hand over back to my moderator to facilitate questions and answers.
That was indeed an excellent presentation, really excellent. I'm impressed. And as the persons who have questions take their positions and get the mic, just one question here. Is that you believe the capital markets right across the region, are they collectively over-regulated or under-regulated for the most part? First question.
If they are over-regulated or under-regulated, the capital markets. So regulations serve different purposes. And I think broadly, our regulations have fostered a pretty safe environment across the region. And we have seen significant improvements, as I've alluded to in my presentations. So I will not say to you that it's a broad brush that the markets are over-regulated. As you have heard in my address and also the questions of others in the audience, there are some areas where we need to look back at the regulations to see if they are still fit for purpose. It is important that we continuously do that assessment for fit for purpose, because as we grow, things change and we need to evolve because change is constant. So those are areas that work would need to be done in, but I do not believe that it's a broad brush to say that we are over-regulated, because at different points in time, the regulations would have served different purposes that brought us to this point.
Question from the floor.
Hello, yes, here we go. Good morning once again. Kalila Enriquez Reynolds, Money Media. Excellent presentation, Stacey Ann, cosign, everything. But since you brought something up, let me take the opportunity, since I have a captive audience here, to do some advocacy on behalf of my industry, which is media and content creators. You mentioned financial literacy and financial education. And yes, it is extremely important that that happens. So for media and content creators, we are here doing the work, helping to grow your client base. If I had $1 for everybody who said, Kalila, because I watch your program, I opened an investment account and I started investing, I would be on an island sipping coconut water somewhere right now. But my point is, my advocacy, my call to the room today is to please fund and support and sponsor the people who are doing this work, many times for free. I see a lot of them in the room. Learn, Grow, Invest is here. Renee, stand up. Limitless Podcast is here. Where are they? They're doing great work as well. So please support the content creators and the media, traditional as well, because media is in a very precarious position right now. Make sure that we get the funding to continuously provide the education that we need to do and to help to build your client base. Call me, 540-6241, advertise on Money Media. Thank you.
Hi, Keith Collister, Jamaica Observer. I see you had a bunch of strategies, but what I understand you didn't fully address the issue of harmonization of the capital market across the region. For example, many of you may not know that there was a regional bankruptcy act that might have been useful in the collapse of a Caribbean conglomerate in Trinidad if they had actually got around to finalizing it across the region a few decades ago, or a decade ago. So how do you see NCB breaking those regional barriers, the same ones you're talking about? And because it seems to me that in the new world order, a regional capital market is even more essential than it previously was.
There's some hard truth in my response, Keith. And let me start here. We can continue to advocate the importance. And what I find with advocacy is that it's not instantaneous in the benefits that it delivers. And it will take some time to get us there. Because even a regional stock exchange, we've spoken about the matter so many different times. We've been trying to pioneer it for so long, and it has not come to fruition. It will take, as much as we collaborate, it will take greater importance to focus on the region, to move that agenda forward. And I believe that things are shaping up nicely in terms of the collaboration, but it's going to take the collaborative effort some time to get us there. And the more they see the benefits, you said it was relevant before, and you said in the world that you're seeing now and the world that you're seeing in the future, it's even more relevant. It's gonna take them some time to be able to come up, but we, Keith, in the work that we do, and what we put out there, we should not stop advocating. We should not let them forget how important it is so that they can keep it front in mind and demonstrate the benefits of it as users, as practitioners in the market, how it could actually unlock capital for them and for us. And what I find when typically you ask persons to do things, you have to show what is in it for them. And the more we continue to demonstrate how each and every one of us within the region can benefit, I think that will spur them further to move the agenda forward. But it has some delicate issues that they have to consider.
Good morning. My name is Amelia Lovelace. I'm from the University of Technology Jamaica Banking and Finance Seminar. And my question is, for upcoming investors like myself as well as others, when it comes down to evaluating investments in uncertain or emerging markets where data may be limited or just unavailable in terms of risk expectations?
How do I prepare you? I want you to be a sponge. How about that? I want you to soak up every knowledge that you can. I want you to read widely. I want you to tap into clubs and associations at your school level that exposes you to investment and also to just thought processes. You will have access through some of those clubs. I think it's called the Investor Club. I cannot remember the full name of it, but I know the UTech has a program where you have investors, and it's an investor club, and it represents a certain segment of the student population interested in that. And making use of those clubs or associations, they matter, because then you have persons who will come in, they will speak about their practical experience, and that helps you where information is not available. And then I say to you as students that you should seek a mentor. And for those of you who have a very keen interest in the financial market, then seek mentors. Today, use your networking opportunities. Do not leave here unless you find a mentor, somebody who you could utilize, because that also helps you. It helps you not just to supplement what it is that you are learning in theory, but it also gives you real-world applications and real-world scenarios that can help you in your own development. And read widely. I'm in the profession and I still have to read widely. And reading widely is important because then it exposes you to other jurisdictions, other markets, where things may be common in one but not in the other, but then understanding it in that market can help you to better appreciate principles that you can use to understanding investments in other markets. So again, I want to close with my encouragement to be a sponge, find a mentor, and utilize the mentor very well.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Stacey and Tate. Let us thank her for an excellent presentation and your questions that facilitated the total presentation. God bless.
I just think that was an absolutely amazing presentation. Man, you have some bright people in this room. Wow. Thank you so much. Again, Stacey Ann Tate, and thank you, Nigel Cook, for a really clear and compelling presentation. So just about here, I just kind of scanned the room and I took a look at your faces, and I could see where you could use a break just about now, right? Yes? So we're going to take a quick break for about 15 minutes. Stretch your legs and you refresh yourselves, and we'll meet you back here in just a while to continue with the third session, another hot session on the way. I mean, today is just absolutely amazing when it comes to the quality of these sessions. So we'll see you back here in 15 minutes, and we'll continue with more.
have come to the end of the 21st staging of the Jamaica Stock Exchange's Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference. Over the past 3 days, leaders of government and industry have shared critical insight shaping the future of business and finance. Stay tuned for highlights from the conference. Until then, I am Rochelle Moncrief signing off from the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel. Thank you so much for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
Enjoy peace of mind knowing that your hard-earned money is protected by the JDIC. That's right, the JDIC through the Deposit Insurance Scheme guarantees up to $1.2 million of your deposits in commercial banks, merchant banks, and building societies. This means your deposits, such as your savings and checking accounts, are covered. Rest easy, knowing that your deposits are secure. Your deposits always protected. For more information, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at JDICJAM, or visit our website at www.jdic.org.
JDIC, protecting deposits for you and